Something that I find a little bit surprising is how much more interest there is in seeing redesigns of Pokemon from Generation 1 compared to any other generation. I guess it's because those designs are more familiar and maybe a bit boring by now, so everyone wants to see a new spin. Probably a similar reason why Megas and Gigantamax forms are also popular. Thankfully, there's the new 151, which if you're not familiar with it already, is a project that I've been running since 2016 with my friends Infinipede and more recently Banana Meteor, where we're redesigning all 151 original Pokemon. If you want to follow the project, everything is posted to our Tumblr, or you can see the updates that I post to my Twitter, or you can watch all the videos in this series, although the video series does run quite a bit behind everything else. And since it's been 6 months since I last did one of these videos, I'm going to cover a big chunk of Pokemon today, 11 Pokemon in 6 families, so strap in. Let's start with Ponita and Rapidash. I took on these redesigns, but I really didn't think that there was very much that needed to change. I looked to thoroughbred horses for their anatomy, since thoroughbreds are bred for speed, and I also combined their coloration patterns with the original colors of Ponita and Rapidash. So for Ponyta, the only real difference is that it's much ganglier with much longer legs, so that it really looks like a colt because the Pokedex often talks about it as a young horse. And it has a little start of a horn. Rapidash, again, isn't too different. The horn is the classic twisted style of unicorn horns, and the flames coming out from the chest are supposed to look like wings. This is to reference its incredible speed, as well as some Pokedex entries. Gold says that its hooves barely touch the ground. Crystal says that its flames get bigger as it runs, so I like the idea of these fire wings stretching backwards as it picks up speed. The color is what I'm not super happy with. The idea was to have really intense blue flames that get less intense as it gets farther away from the body. But it ended up looking like those 90s Lisa Frank notebooks, and that's just not the vibe that I was going for. Maybe if I'd used fewer shades, like maybe just blue, red, and yellow, it might have worked better.
Lisa Frank!
It's a horse and everything, right? Next up, Slowpoke and Slowbro. My collaborator Infinipede was the one who handled these ones. Slowpoke and Slowbro have pretty generic bodies, so Infinipede pushed it a little bit more towards a salamander, a land and aquatic animal, just like Slowpoke and Slowbro. So the body is a little bit slimmer and a little bit flatter, and it has some patterning to it. The ears are more like the external gills of juvenile salamanders, and the tendrils on the tail are meant to function like a lure, since Slowpoke uses it to fish. Some anglerfish have lures that are kind of like this too. Slowbro itself is basically just a bigger version of Slowpoke, but there are some important differences in the shell. The color matches Shelter's purple better, and the shell also reaches under the legs, so the belly is actually part of the shell as well. Since Slowbro is partly based on a yokai called Sazai Oni, which is basically like a turban shell demon, the shape of the shell better matches the usual depictions of that yokai, and it even has eyes on the tips of the spikes. Magnemite and Magneton are close to my least favorite Pokemon from Generation 1. Magneton in particular is just too simple. I don't like it as an evolution to Magnemite. But the redesigns that I did, or, well, that we do all of the designs as a team, but I was just the lead designer on this one, but I love how they turned out. The idea here is that the main body is the only part that's actually Magnemite. Everything else is just attached to it by magnetism, so it's a little bit loose and a little bit random. The body is octahedral because magnetite, the mineral that they're named for, has crystals of this shape. And the eye is basically a depression on that surface with a metal ball inside. Think of like Meltan's eye. And then Magneton is technically still 3 Magnemite, but not really. It's actually just 1 Magnemite, the bigger, darker one, that has grown strong enough to actually trap other Magnemite in its own magnetic field. It looks like this with all of the objects sort of orbiting around it when it's attacking, and maybe it can place everything in front of itself as a shield to defend, but at rest, I imagine all of the parts kind of coming together in a layout that's similar to Magnezone. I know that they are fairly simple changes, but to me, they make a big difference. FARFETCH'D is not a bad design, a little bit simple maybe, but not bad, but its concept is very Japanese, and so to a Western audience, it just looks like a plain duck holding a leek, and that's just kind of nonsensical. By now, most fans know that it's based on an idiom about something that is surprising but also convenient, like an expression of good luck. So Infinipede, who led this redesign, wanted to westernize that concept a bit while still keeping the original idea. So this is what we did, and honestly, I love it. What used to be a V-shaped eyebrow pattern, it's rotated to become a lucky number 7 on the forehead. We swapped the leek for a 4-leaf clover sword, sort of, but the leek becomes an even more integral part of the design by migrating to the head. Well, it is more of a green onion here, but leeks and green onions are very closely related. This also helps to add a bit more color to the design by giving FARFETCH'D something of a green mallard look. And it's a bit subtle, but the feathers of the tail are also supposed to be leek or green onion leaves. Oh, and the legs are extra thick because they're nice and meaty, perfect for cooking a delicious duck stew. The issues with the designs of Doduo and Dodrio are very similar to FARFETCH'D. They're not bad, but just a little bit boring, so the main objective of our version was to just spice them up. Infinipede was also the lead designer here, and they took inspiration from a number of different flightless birds, emus, ostriches, and cassowaries, the latter of which is where Dodrio gets its crest, and also where the blue comes from. Well, Doduo's colors are more of a combination of cassowaries and emus, whereas Dodrio is more of a combination of ostriches and cassowaries. Cassowaries and emus have feet with 3 forward-facing toes, where the middle one is significantly bigger than the other ones. Ostriches have only 2 toes, but the effect is similar. So that's where the foot design comes from, and we also made the legs very beefy to account for all of that running. And there are also Pokédex entries that talk about their extra deep footprints. Like Silver specifically says that they can be 4 inches deep, so the powerful feet play into that as well.
4 inches.
Right? And finally for today, we have Seal and Dugong, probably the plainest pair of Pokemon ever, which actually presents a challenge. You'd think that these Pokemon give us a blank slate and we can do pretty much whatever we want with them. But because there's so little that's identifiable about them, it's hard to change much without losing all relation to the originals. So when Banana Meteor took on these redesigns, the changes that she made were relatively small. It's just a little bit of color and a few added elements, but I think quite effective. The purple on Seal's face is just another cool color, just to give the body a little bit more color variation. But other than that, the changes were meant to really play it up as a Seal pup. It's fluffy, it's pudgy, it has eyes and nose that are much bigger than before because that's a common element of baby animals, especially in cartoon depictions. And then for Dugong, we really amplified its frilliness. Its fins and tail are much frillier than before, and it also gets a frilly collar that also helps to play up its elegance. The tail is shaped to be reminiscent of a scallop shell, and the collar is highly inspired by the Aurora Borealis, the northern lights, which is why there's a greenish-blue color on the inside that I imagine would also be a bit iridescent, so as the collar ripples, the color would also change a little bit. The blue color, and more importantly the ice horn, also help to really make this Pokemon look like it's an ice type, because there wasn't very much about the original Dugong design to really justify that type. Alright, that's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed these redesigns, and I look forward to reading your comments. If you want to see every design that we've done so far, including the ones that I haven't talked about in a video yet, I suggest you check out our Tumblr. Just last week we posted our take on Lickitung. But also, for a few months now, we've been developing our ideas on stream so that we can share our process with you and also get some live feedback. The next stream where we will redesign Coughing and Wheezing is planned for April 10th, which I guess is tomorrow from when this video comes out, so make sure to subscribe and turn on all notifications so that you don't miss it. Thank you for watching. And thank you to my patrons for their support, including luxury patron Ethan from Chicago, but today, a special thank you to this month's newest patron, Greggy. I'll see you in the next chapter.